All right, today we are looking at a manuscript called Donald Trump, the Architect of Modern American Ambition, a biography covering his entire life from business to the presidency. Let's just dive right into the first major point, which is about the angle. The most immediate issue for me is this significant disconnect between the promise of the title and what the narrative actually does. It's a very competent chronological summary, but it doesn't quite deliver on that specific idea of modern American ambition.
That is exactly where my head went. That title is heavy. It's making a big promise. Architect of Modern American Ambition. It implies you're going to learn how he built a new definition of success.
How he drafted the blueprints.
Exactly. But when you get into the actual pages, it functions more like a really well-researched encyclopedia entry. You get the dates, the schools, the buildings, the election results. It tells you what happened.
But not how he redefined the idea of ambition itself.
Yes, and I think there's a risk that by sticking so close to that standard timeline, we're missing the entire architect part of the story.
Okay, I see what you mean. The author has given us a very clean, very accurate sequence of events. He was born in Queens, went to Wharton, built the Grand Hyatt, hosted The Apprentice, became president. It's all factually sound. But you're saying it's just a flat line, not a sharp argument.
Precisely. The title suggests a thesis about success shifting from, brick and mortar assets to pure branding and media. But the text never explicitly makes that connection. It treats the Commodore Hotel deal and The Apprentice as just two different things that happen in order.
Instead of steps in an evolution.
Right, it's relying on the reader to connect those dots. And it dilutes the power of the whole piece.
So let's talk about strengthening it. The writer really needs to restructure the biographical facts so they serve the argument that he architected a new kind of ambition, not just that he lived through it.
The whole point is modern ambition. We should reframe this. We could talk about how his laser focus on Manhattan while he was still in school was a huge shift from his father's business model.
That's a great distinction. Fred Trump was about volume in the outer boroughs, affordable housing.
Utilitarian, effective. Fred's ambition was about housing people, collecting rent. Donald's ambition, which he really honed at Wharton, was about status. It was about the skyline.
About the brand.
Exactly. And if the writer highlights that contrast, suddenly Wharton isn't just a school he went to, it's the lab where he cooked up this new recipe for American success. It sets the whole stage.
And we can apply that same lens to the entertainment section. Let's look at The Apprentice.
This is probably the most crucial moment for the manuscript's thesis, and right now it feels underplayed. It says the show increased his fame. Well, yes, obviously.
Made him a household name.
Right, true, but that's not the insight. To deliver on the architect promise, the writer needs to argue that this was the moment ambition itself shifted from doing, actually building things, to performing, the avatar of the boss.
That's a really powerful pivot. So you're suggesting the writer has to explicitly connect the branding section to the modern part of the title.
Yes. The argument becomes that modern ambition is about monetizing the name, not just the building. The text lists the steaks, the vodka, the airline. Instead of just the list of business ventures, frame them as the early blueprints for the influencer economy. He was doing it before that word even existed.
That validates the title completely.
It does. And suddenly that list of failed products isn't about failure, it's about successful experiments in branding.
It completely recontextualizes it. Okay, let's shift gears to the writing mechanics. The narrative relies way too heavily on abstract adjectives to describe his personality, which creates a kind of distance for the reader.
This is a classic show, don't tell problem, but for a personality this big, it's absolutely critical. I saw it all through the early chapters. We get phrases like energetic and assertive, or disciplined, or unconventional. The text tells us these things are true, but it doesn't really give us the scenes to prove it. He feels a little static, like a character sheet in a game.
I see. So the suggestion here is to replace those summary adjectives with specific anecdotes, details that actually demonstrate the traits in action.
Exactly. Take the childhood section. It says the military academy emphasized discipline and shaped his confidence. That's a summary. But what if we could just describe a specific routine? What did a Tuesday morning look like there? The shoe polish, the marching drills, the hierarchy in the barracks.
So instead of saying he learns discipline,
You show the rigid structure that forced it on him. Yes.
let the reader feel it.
Let them feel the regimentation. That way, when he emerges with this confidence or aggression, we understand the forge it came from. We don't just know he's tough, we know why. The same thing applies to the business section. The text says the Commodore Hotel deal showed his ability to secure tax breaks. That is so incredibly dry for what was a massive, massive gamble.
That was the deal that became the Grand Hyatt. It says he could negotiate deals.
Negotiate deals is just a placeholder phrase. It doesn't do any work. The writer needs to walk us through the sheer audacity of that negotiation.
Put us in the room.
Put us in the room. Describe the state of the hotel. It was derelict, a blight. Describe the specific leverage he used to get that unprecedented tax abatement. Don't just tell us he was a risk taker. Show us the chips on the table. Make the reader sweat a little.
And I assume this applies to the political section too. The text calls his campaign style unconventional.
Unconventional is such a safe word. It evokes nothing. To really capture that modern ambition angle, the writer should describe the atmosphere of a specific 2016 rally. The weird music playlist, Rolling Stones, and opera. The lack of a teleprompter. The way he'd point to the cameras and call them the enemy.
Show how he communicated with the forgotten voter.
Viscerally. Don't just say he appealed to them. Show the feedback loop between the man on the stage and the people in the crowd. That raw energy is his essence, not the adjective unconventional.
That makes a lot of sense. Grounding the traits in physical scenes lets the reader participate in the analysis. Now, let's talk about the overall structure. The manuscript currently separates his life into business and politics, and it misses this huge opportunity to show how his business tactics became his political style.
This is a major structural opportunity. Right now, the presidency section reads like a separate list of policy bullets: taxes, the border wall, NAFTA. It feels completely disconnected from the psychological profile built in the first half. It's almost like a different person walked into the White House.
We lose the continuity.
We do. The reader needs to feel that the man in the Oval Office is the exact same man from Trump Tower.
The material builds a strong case for his business background and then a strong case for his presidency, but that bridge between them is just missing.
It is. We need to thread that real estate deal-maker persona all the way through the presidency section. The author has to show he didn't change his methods, he just changed his market.
Okay, so let's get specific. Foreign policy. The text talks about replacing NAFTA with USMCA, tariffs on China.
Right, and it reads like a poli-sci textbook, but what if we look at it through the eyes of a Manhattan developer? We need to explicitly link this back to his 1980s zero-sum real estate mindset. In that world, for you to win big, someone else has to lose. You have to crush them in the negotiation. The argument should be that he treated foreign nations like rival developers.
So the tariffs aren't just economic policy. They're a negotiation tactic from his Trump Organization days.
Their leverage. He's trying to squeeze a zoning permit out of China, essentially. And look at the border wall. The text frames it as immigration policy.
But you're saying there's more to it.
Is there a risk that we're overlooking the builder aspect? This is a man who spent his whole life putting up concrete structures with his name on them. The wall isn't just a barrier, it's a construction project.
A tangible, physical solution to a complex problem.
Which is exactly how a developer thinks. A politician writes a law, a builder pours concrete. Connect those dots.
That brings so much more depth to it. It makes the presidency an extension of the man, not a sequel to his story. What about the section on his financial troubles and the impeachments?
That's my favorite parallel here. The text mentions he framed his Atlantic City casino bankruptcies not as failures, but as smart business decisions. He spun them. He used the laws of the country to his advantage, is what he said.
And then later the text says he challenged the 2020 election and claimed fraud.
The writer needs to compare his handling of the bankruptcies directly to his handling of the political crises. Highlight the pattern. In both cases, he reframes a setback, a bankruptcy or an election loss, as a battle against a rigged system. It's the same psychological move. If the writer makes that callback, the manuscript becomes a study of a consistent character, not just a history book. His software never updated, he just applied it to a larger hard drive.
That's a fascinating way to put it.
It turns the whole thing into a psychological study. Okay, I want to move to the conclusion. The legacy section feels a little too safe, a little too generalized. It just states he's impactful without really defining the nature of that impact.
It is a bit safe, isn't it? Saying Donald Trump is one of the most recognizable figures or that he reshaped politics is, well, it's a truism. We all know that. The text lacks a sharp assessment of what specifically changed in the American landscape because of him. It feels like a placeholder conclusion.
Okay, so the potential here is to go much deeper. The writer needs to sharpen that conclusion, define the Trump era in concrete sociological or political terms, not just biographical ones.
Yes. Let's take the media. The text says he used Twitter. Okay, but the impact is so much deeper. How did his presidency permanently change the relationship between the press and the executive? He bypassed the filter.
Destroy the idea of the gatekeeper.
Absolutely. And that is a structural change to the presidency itself that will likely outlast him. The conclusion needs to nail that down. It's not just that he was loud, it's that he rewired the connection between a leader and the people.
And what about his influence on the Republican Party? The text mentions that.
Again, influence is too vague. The text says he appealed to voters left behind by globalization. The conclusion should analyze how he literally transformed the voter-based demographics. He turned the GOP from a party of corporate conservatism into a populist movement in many areas. That's a fundamental realignment of the American political map. The conclusion needs to state that clearly. He didn't just lead the party, he changed who is in the party.
And finally, polarization. The intro mentions deep political division.
It does, but we can go deeper. What about the rhetoric itself? We mentioned enemy of the people earlier. The conclusion should discuss how his specific rhetorical style mechanically altered public discourse. It moved the Overton window of what's acceptable for a president to say. That's a legacy item. The norms that the text mentions were broken. The conclusion needs to list which norms and discuss whether they can even be repaired.
So it sounds like we're really asking the writer to be much more definitive. Instead of just saying he was controversial, explain the mechanics of the controversy.
Exactly. Don't just tell us he left a mark. Describe the shape of the dent. The reader wants to know what the car looks like after the crash, not just that there was an accident.
This has been really productive. We've hit the angle, the descriptive writing, the structure, and the significance.
I think if the writer can tackle these 4 areas, this moves from a standard biography to a really insightful piece of cultural analysis. The raw materials are all there. The research is solid. They just need to be sharpened and connected.
The writer needs to step forward and actually make the argument.
Instead of just presenting the evidence.
Yes. Okay, let's recap the main actionable takeaways for the listener. First, realign the content to fully support that architect of ambition thesis. Argue that he shifted the American definition of success from accumulating assets to monetizing fame. Use Wharton and The Apprentice to prove it. Second, use specific scenes to show character instead of just using abstract adjectives. We want to see the military school routine. We want to feel the risk of the Commodore deal. Show us, don't tell us he was bold. Third, bridge that gap between the business and political sections. Show how the real estate dealmaker psychology drove his presidency. Connect the tariffs to negotiation tactics and bankruptcy to his handling of impeachment. Show the consistent character. And finally, sharpen that conclusion. Move beyond general statements about fame. Analyze the specific, structural changes he made to the media, to voter demographics, and to political norms. Define his legacy concretely. We would love to see how this manuscript evolves. Please apply these lenses and feel free to resubmit the work for a follow-up critique.